This piece is by Mark Frank and read by Automated Voices. Welcome. Today, right here and now, we're opening our narrative mediation guide for the perplexed. And without further ado, we're cutting straight to the heart of the matter, because this isn't just about resolving conflicts. It's about how we understand ourselves, our relationships, and the stories that shape our lives. This video is the first in a new playlist we're calling DIY Narrative Mediation. It's for anyone outside the field who wants a clear, simple discussion of the ideas behind this paradigm shift in conflict resolution going on in our lives. And if you are a mediator or a professional in the field, don't worry. There's a separate playlist that goes deeper into the professional theory of narrative mediation. You'll find the link right here on screen. But for now, let's keep it simple. My guest today is Mark Frank, creator of this YouTube channel, a mediator, a lawyer, and someone who has fallen in love with narrative mediation. Mark, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Hope. I'm really looking forward to starting this conversation.
Since this is our first episode, let's start with you. What drew you into this world of mediation and narrative?
Well, I studied law back in the late 70s, and the way it was taught then, it felt almost like biology. Law was treated as if it were a natural phenomenon, something that just was. Legislators were these quasi-sages, judges their interpreters, and conflict itself was seen almost like hysteria, something to be controlled, managed, and brushed aside. Decades later, I discovered mediation, and while it was a breath of fresh air, I also found it confusing in practice. It made sense in theory, but when real emotions came into the room, it was much harder to apply. Mediation, I figured, was easier said than done.
So that gap between theory and lived conflict, that's what pulled you toward narrative mediation?
Exactly. Narrative mediation reframes not just conflict, but the paradigm reframes human nature itself. We usually assume people are rational actors, but narrative mediation starts from a different premise. We're storytellers.
What do you mean by that?
Think about it. We don't experience life as raw data on spreadsheets. We turn events into stories. Stories that give us continuity, coherence, identity. And those stories aren't just for ourselves. They're also how we present ourselves to others, so they'll see us as reliable and relatable.
I love that. Because when someone asks, "How was your day?" you don't give them bullet points, you give them a story.
Exactly. And that matters in mediation. Traditional approaches, like the getting to yes model, made huge progress by looking beneath positions to find needs and interests, but they didn't really equip us to handle emotions. Anger, fear, shame. Those aren't side notes. In the narrative paradigm, they are key to the story. Narrative mediation helps us take those emotions seriously and even work with them.
Do you have a story that illustrates this?
Sure. One of my favorites is about my father. He immigrated to Australia in the 1950s and worked as a wool buyer. One week, he struck a deal with a farmer at what turned out to be a very low price. That is, because hours later, news of a war overseas made wool prices skyrocket. Suddenly, the wool he'd bought was worth a small fortune. On the one hand, he could have pocketed the profit, but he was worried the farmer would feel cheated once he heard the wool report on the radio. So the next day, my father went back, wrote a personal check for thousands of pounds and said, "Of course I meant to make a profit, but not that much of a profit."
That's powerful. And depending on how you tell it, it could mean very different things.
Exactly. To his rivals, it made him look like a sucker. To his family, it made him a man of integrity. And late in life, he regaled this story as the turning point in his career, when he earned the trust of an entire farming community, transitioning from something akin to an itinerant peddler into a trusted business associate. Same facts, different meanings.
So when you say we're storytellers, you mean it literally. We're constantly editing, reframing, reauthoring.
Yes, we all carry these imaginary story folders, different plot inflections, different character portrayals, shifting versions. Which one we tell depends on context. And that's what narrative mediation does. It says, let's bring more of those possible versions into the open. Let's not reduce someone to the aggressor or the victim. Let's explore the bigger, multi-layered story. Because when you realize the story isn't fixed, the conflict isn't fixed either. And that creates the possibility of change.
That's such a hopeful idea. And for those who want to keep learning, this is just the beginning. You've got a whole YouTube series, right?
Yes, it's in Hebrew, and we're working on English versions, including this vodcast playlist. It introduces these ideas step by step. From the paradigm shift we've talked about today, into getting a handle on these elusive paradigm shifts and how narrative mediation gives us tools to shift those stories.
So stay with us and click through to the next video in the series, further along into this journey.
Thanks, Hope. I'm really glad we could start here.
This is DIY Narrative Mediation, where we learn to change the stories we live in.